Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Justice, and if you saw the thumbnail, read the title of this video, you already know what you're watching. I'm going to be discussing some of my favorite horror anime that I have seen. Something that I want to throw out here before I get too far into this video is I'm not the world's biggest anime fan, and I haven't seen all of them. And in fact, I haven't seen a lot of the basic ones either, so you're not going to see things like Death Note or Parasite on this video. It's just stuff that I haven't got to watching yet. This is very much a genre that I go in and out of at random. Sometimes I find one that very much piques my interest and I'm obsessed with it, and then I kind of fall off for a while. But I will say, if you guys have any recommendations, you should leave them down in the comments. Another thing I want to mention about this video is it's not going to be in any particular order. I'm going to discuss these anime and I'm going to give them like a mini review slash recommendation for if you want to check it out, especially if you're kind of a noob with all this, which I am very much just barely a step above noob. If you guys want, I can help you try to take off your training wheels and you could transcend where I'm at with all this. But I do think that there is some really good recs that I have in here and that there is some really good horror anime to watch. And trust me, I promise not all anime is Dragon Ball Z if that's something that you're worried about. So with that all out of the way, let's get on to talking about some shows. Now, right off the bat, the first one that I feel like I have to mention on this list, and is the only film that I have in this list, is Perfect Blue. It's a horror thriller that follows a pop star who's putting down the mic to become an aspiring actress, but when a superfan becomes unhappy with this, she is stalked and harassed and left guessing on what's real or not when confronted from what is seemingly a ghost from her past. If you haven't seen this yet, then I would say get right on it, because you would be very surprised how much this film has inspired and also been ripped off by American media as well. If you've seen a Darren Aronofsky movie, you have seen direct shots from this anime as well. His films Black Swan and Requiem for a Dream have shots that were directly lifted from this anime, which, love that movie. One of the most depressing movies that you'll ever see. Love it. Great shot, but don't be stealing people's shit, man. This film was also created by Satoshi Kon, who created other films such as Paprika, which is another one that has been referenced in other American media. And if I could justify that being a horror film, I would be talking about that right now. But I can't, because that would be the whole video if I did. So we're going to move on from that. Perfect Blue is a huge roller coaster ride, and it leaves you on the edge of your seat throughout the film. It's this psychological thriller that just constantly has you mind fucked. That is the best way I can put it, as you're trying to figure out who this stalker is and who this person is that's been following this pop star around. And without getting into any spoilers, really, this is very much a film where you feel like you get an idea of what's going on partway through before it like flips it all on its head and you realize that you know nothing at all and you're back at square one. And so you get to like that badass climax. But anyways, like I said, I don't want to spoil this one that much, so you should go watch it. This next one is going to be one of 3 zombie animes that I'm going to sprinkle throughout this list, which is an overdone medium for films here in America. I feel like it got very played out in the 2000s with The Walking Dead and all of that. Ironically enough, there really isn't that many zombie anime, and for some reason, that medium for zombie storytelling is something that I am absolutely in love with. I can't even really put my finger on it, but for some reason, zombie animes just hit different for me. If you guys have that similar take, you should let me know and tell me why you feel that way down in the comments below. The next one on my list is Psalm 100, Bucket List of the Dead. And I would say this anime doesn't really fall into any one particular genre very well or very neatly, because it is a lot of things all at once. It's horror, it's comedy, but it's also not too hard on either one of those. It's also very heartfelt and chill. And there's even a lot of action sequences throughout this show, but I also wouldn't really consider it action either. It's kind of a blender of a whole bunch of different genres, but it works very well. It follows our lead protagonist, who is fed up and burnt out from his awful job. So the moment that the zombie apocalypse ends up happening, he realizes that he doesn't have to go to work anymore, and he is overjoyed with the end of the world, and he ends up creating this bucket list of 100 things that he wants to do before he ultimately becomes a zombie or before he ends up dying. Weirdly enough, even though a plague ends up wiping out humanity in this series. It is a very uplifting, heartfelt story, and I highly recommend it. I think that it's very artistically done. I don't think it jumps into being that gory at all. In fact, I love the stylization of the gore in this series. It does take away from it being scary, but as I was saying a second ago, this show isn't trying to scare you by any means. But even when you see bloodshed throughout this series, it always comes up as this like rainbow color of paint that splatters everywhere. And it's really cool and instantly iconic imagery to me. And this is the newest one I have on this list. They even made a live action Netflix adaptation of this, which I haven't seen yet. If you guys have seen that, you should let me know if it's any good, and maybe I'll end up doing a video on that in the future. The next one that I'm going to mention is School Days, and this is a very polarizing anime for a lot of people for very good reason. I can fully understand that because this is the ultimate example of a mismatch of a whole bunch of stuff. But I love the roller coaster ride it's on because it doesn't start out as horror, but by the time you get to the last episode, that is the main thing that I could describe this as, because especially the last scene is just so ooh. This anime was inspired by a game of the same name. It was a choose your own choice game, but no matter what choice that you made, no matter what you did, the outcome was always negative and not good. Yes, you could get a different ending, but each ending was bad, some worse than others. And in this story, you follow our three main characters in this love triangle. It's a boy who has two girls fawning after him. And it starts out as this very cutesy love story. It's your very typical love type anime, but then it ends up building into this drama thriller, and eventually it embraces the horror that I was talking about in its final moments. It is one of those stories where you just end up hating the main protagonist so much in the series. I cannot tell you how much I detested that character by the time everything was said and done. And then even the other characters in it that end up being bad guys, you end up feeling bad for them because of how shitty our lead character was to them. Like I said, it all builds up to this very disturbing climax. In fact, I would say it's one of the more disturbing scenes that I've seen in an anime, and I think if it were done in live action, a lot more people would be talking about it because holy crap, that ending is absolutely fucked. I'm not going to clip any scenes of the ending from the actual anime in here, so any scenes you saw of death that were shown in here were not from the anime, they were all from the game, so worry not. Next up on my list, and it also has a reputation as well, is High School of the Dead, and I can say without a doubt as a gay man that I am one of the few men that is able to say that I genuinely only watched this for the plot. This was amongst the first that I ever saw when I was back in middle school, and I went through a whole phase with anime. A lot of it I would attribute to my obsession that I had with this show. It follows a group of high school kids that band together and do whatever they can to try to survive in the wake of a zombie apocalypse. The plot isn't very original by any means. It is very run-of-the-mill, your normal zombie story. I find a lot of the characters in it to be very rootable if you can get past the fan service that is constantly thrown in your face. That is the biggest downside to this anime, and something that I think has aged it very poorly is the ungodly amounts of fan service that they decided to throw in there.
Anime is a prime example of why two nukes just wasn't enough.
But I went through a whole obsession with this anime, and I remember when I finished the one and only season that this has, that I ultimately ended up reading the mangas because I just wanted to know what was going to happen next, and I really do wish the manga would have gotten made because the sequel manga, I would say, was very much inspired by George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead, because they all end up taking up place in the mall.
This is exactly like that George Romeo movie I once saw.
But the story ends up getting super dark and super grim, and some of the scenes that are in that second book for it, I think it would have made a lot more people respect this anime and seen it as more than just a pair of bouncing boobs. But unfortunately, even if you were looking for more story after watching this anime by reading the manga, it's sad because the manga just kind of ends. It doesn't even end on a cliffhanger or anything like that. It just kind of like fizzles out and ends altogether. The creator of this manga actually ended up passing away from a heart attack. The artist that worked with him actually decided that he didn't want to continue the story without him because it was his story, which I find very respectable and I understand. But I will forever be disappointed that this story wasn't ever able to come to its completion. But if you're able to get past fan service, I do think that this is another good one that you should check out. To get all the zombie anime out of the way that I want to recommend, the last one that I'm going to mention is School Live. This is one that's really hard to talk about without spoiling stuff. Even me just saying the zombie thing is a spoiler. The only reason I'm saying it is because it was told to me before I watched it, and you find out at the end of the first episode anyways, but that isn't the only twist that you see in this story. This anime follows a group of girls who are trapped in their high school with their school teacher in the wake of a zombie apocalypse, while the main protagonist is very much struggling and in denial of what's going on in the world around her. It jumps between scenes of all this like cutesy stuff going on because that's her perspective. She doesn't see that the world is actually ending, and she's actually gone insane because of all of this, while all the other characters are trying to help her keep her illusion, even though in the long run it's going to hurt her and everyone else around her. They don't want her to have to see and be afraid of all the fucked up shit that's going on. This is another one that I think has a lot of heartfelt moments in it, a lot of rootable characters, and unlike High School of the Dead, I would say that this one does not really have any fan service. If there was, it went over my head. Like, I didn't see it personally. I find all these characters to be very sweet, likable for their own reasons. And two, the twists and turns that you follow throughout this anime are very well done. Like I said, I might have spoiled that first initial twist at the beginning, but that isn't the only twist that this story has to offer you. There is so much more to it. There's this huge bomb dropped on you that makes you realize that like things weren't what you thought they were the entire time. And I think the writing in this is done very well. I don't think it telegraphs its twists too much, and by the time it does show them, they make perfect sense. They don't feel forced, and it constantly kept me on my toes as I was watching it. And it was upon this entry in the list that I realized that most of the anime I'm going to talk about is going to involve a high school. So you're going to hear me say that a lot in this video, so be prepared. The next one I want to recommend is more of a horror action, I would say. It's called Future Diary. It follows Yuki, who shortly after discovering his phone is able to tell the future. He's thrown into a deadly game where he has to fight to the death with other players in order to figure out which one of these players is ultimately going to become God of the universe. Something that I've always mentioned on this channel is I'm very much a sucker for the people hunting people subgenre, and this perfectly falls into that. So your films like The Hunt, Battle Royale, Hunger Games, The Long Walk, like I am there for all of it. I am obsessed with this genre as a whole. Just something about it has always spoke to me. This one is very much no different. But one thing that I love about this anime is there is so many characters in it, but it gives you so much growth for each one of them, even if they only have very little screen time, which a lot of the characters will pop up in an episode and then be gone within an episode or two later. And I think they do a really good job at growing the characters and making them fully rounded, and then even making it sad when they ultimately end up dying. The biggest standout for a character for me in this is Yuno. She is so sick, twisted, and is our main lead, Yuki's stalker slash lover, who is helping him survive in this game. The lengths that she goes to make sure that he survives is very endearing, but also very horrifying. The best way I could describe her character archetype is if you watched any cartoons from the early 2000s, or I guess in general, just my touchstone is 2000s, there was always the obsessive, like, side character girl that had, like, a huge crush on the main lead and was always obsessing over them and was, like, borderline stalking them, if not actually stalking them. In fact, a bigger example of that, I think, would be a character like Sierra from Total Drama.
Cody Emmett Jameson Anderson. I also happen to know that your birthday is April 1st. You're my very own April Fool.
Characters like that I've just always enjoyed. I think they're funny. And in this show, I do think Yuno is very funny, but I also think that her whole backstory is heartbreaking, and it also makes you empathize with this sociopath. But this is another anime that has a whole bunch of twists and turns that I don't want to get into in fear of spoiling the whole story for you guys. The only thing that I recommend if you do end up deciding to watch this one, I don't think the ending of this series is very good unless you watch the extra episode that they released after the fact, the OVA. I think that ends it in a much more heartfelt way and isn't so bleak and depressing unless you like those kind of endings. For me, I just didn't think it was a good fit for this series. So I would very much say find that episode if you can, if you end up watching this show. The very last one that I'm going to get into on this list is Another, which is this paranormal anime that I think you can compare in many, many ways to the Final Destination franchise. It follows this class that's cursed, and the haunting onset class began when a student passed away years earlier in the class, and then the students that were still alive continued to pretend that the girl was still there, even though she wasn't. This ultimately ended up leading to one student in the class every year since then being a ghost and nobody else in the class realizing it. And as long as that student is alive in said class, all these strange deaths start happening to students in the class and direct relatives of said students in the class as well. It's very much a slow burn at the beginning when it's setting everything up for you. If you're into that stuff, it does have an amazing payoff. I would say about episode 2 or 3 is when it genuinely starts to pick up. And then it also builds into one of the best climaxes that I've seen in any anime, in my personal opinion. The deaths in this series as well are very shocking and gruesome, especially for being a cartoon at the end of the day. And a lot of them are shaped as accidents, which leads me back to what I was mentioning earlier about Final Destination. A lot of these deaths that you see in this show could easily fit into a Final Destination movie without making anybody raise an eye at all. In fact, my all-time favorite death in this, and I even say it would transcend just being in an anime, it's one of my all-time favorite horror deaths in general. You have this scene where this girl is running down the hall and she's holding her umbrella and she ends up slipping in a puddle and falling down the stairs. But as she's falling, her umbrella literally goes at just the right angle and she falls right on top of it. And like I said, for it being a cartoon at the end of the day, it is very much a shocking scene. But you have deaths like that riddled throughout this series, and you can't tell me that you could look at that and that does not look like something that you would see in a Final Destination movie. Like, really, try me, guys. That's another great thing about this anime too, is you don't know who this mysterious dead person is in the classroom. You are left guessing just like everybody else who is in this class, trying to figure out who it is. And one second they'll have you thinking it's one person, and the next they'll have you thinking it's someone else entirely. And it just constantly keeps you on your toes. You fully understand why all these students in this class slip into this paranoia with one another as more and more of them are dying off. Out of everything on this list, this is probably the one that I would recommend to you guys the absolute most if you haven't seen it yet. This very much sidesteps a lot of the tropes that you see in anime. It's a very grim, depressing story, but it is so good. That about wraps up my list, and I hope I gave some good recs if you haven't seen some of these before. If you guys have any recommendations for any other like anime shows or movies that you want me to check out, then you should leave that in the comments below. Or if you just have anything else that's horror related that you want me to cover on this channel, then you could just comment that down below too. I am all ears, and I'm always looking for more stuff to cover in the future. And if you're new to the channel, hi, I'm Justice, and I really hope that you enjoyed the video. And if you want to see more stuff just like this, then just click that subscribe button. I would really love to have you guys. With that all out of the way, I hope you enjoyed the video, and this has been Justice, and I hope to see you on the next one. Take care.